Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa natubu ilayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa sayyiati a'malina. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected enemy Shaitan. With Allah's name, the most merciful benefactor, the most merciful redeemer. The most merciful benefactor, the most merciful redeemer. All praise is due to Allah alone. We praise Him, we seek help from Him, we repent to Him, and we ask forgiveness of Him, and we seek refuge in Him from our own weaknesses, our own bad deeds. I bear witness that there is no deity except Allah alone, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to whom the Quran was revealed 1400 years ago, is His servant and messenger to mankind. We thank Almighty Allah for blessing us to be part of His choice to bring us into existence at this time, at the time that He wanted us to be in existence, to complete His growth in terms of the creation, to complete the creation, to bring the creation into a fullness. It required a creator, Allah, and it required facilitators. In other words, it required forces to carry out Allah's will. Some of those forces, Allah called them malaika. Malaika, Allah tells us in the Quran, are the forces that carries out His will without any hesitation. The malaika hesitate not one in carrying out Allah's will. They say in human terms, voices. We hear and we obey when this process is in place. We hear and we obey. Now we find that to be somewhat, not flexible, but somewhat having room so we can think about what really is being said there. Because in the Quran, Allah also says that He told the malaika to make sujjah, bow down, give up your power, make complete obeisance to my man, to Adam. Complete. They didn't have a choice as to say, well, we'll give up 50% of our power, or we'll listen to Adam sometimes. It was not like that. According to the Quran, Allah says in the Quran, He says, to the malaika make sujjah to my man, to Adam. And it says all made sujjah except Iblis. Except Iblis. Now Iblis is a term that Allah uses in the Quran to identify a particular kind of characteristic. A characteristic that sort of stands aside from the general realm of pronouncing what He is in terms of malaika. Because it's clear that Allah said to the malaika. He didn't say to anything other than the malaika. So by bringing up Iblis, it means Iblis is in the same category as the malaika, but there's one difference. One difference. So He's called Iblis because he has a little difference. And that difference is explained. So it says that all of them made sujjah except Iblis. except Iblis. Iblis was one of the haughty ones. One of the ones when Allah says, be to the creation, and the creation comes into existence, unfolding itself thousands of miles into space, eons of time, billions of years, unfolding. And all of that unfolding and all of that creating is one spiritual characteristic that has the power to say, la. Even before you even hear about the one called insane, man. He has the power to say, la. I won't do that. I don't think that's meant for me. So Allah gives that part of the creation the name Iblis. And later on in the Quran, you will find that Allah says that the angels, man, everything was created to obey Allah. Everything. I created everything to obey me. Everything. So by this taking place, Iblis saying, I won't bow down to what you said, shows us that Allah has some other reasoning. Not that Allah is reasoning anything, he just creates. But there's some other part of the creation that's not obviously on the surface. It's just not on the surface that you can see, oh, that's the creation. No, it's a little more to it than that, a little more detailed than that. What makes the creation unfold? What makes it turn? What gives these malaika the power to bring into existence? There's another aspect. And that aspect is the power to say la. That aspect is the power to say no, I will not do that. So Allah has unleashed the creation with the power not to obey him. Why is that so necessary? What is the meaning behind allowing something in the creation that won't obey the Creator? Because there's another element, another part of the creation. And that creation is called insane. That creation is called insane. Man was created the Khalifa. The Khalifa, in order to bring about a change, bringing everything out of this creation into another creation. That's the power of the Khalifa. But the Khalifa would never do that. If the Khalifa wouldn't have the power to say la. If the Khalifa didn't have the power to say la, he would never do that because he would submit to the forces. He would submit to the wildness of this creation. He would submit to the world in which he was born in, which was dominating him. The world that man was born in was dominating man. Animals so big he couldn't see around them. Wild beasts. Man would have stayed in the caves, never coming out. The thunder and the lightning would have frightened him so much he would say, this world is not for me. He would have just submitted and not been anything. But because Allah created a spirit in that man, a spirit in that man for him to say, la, I will not let this push me down. I will not let this back me up. I will not let them run me into the cave. I will not let that happen. And I don't know how I'm going to solve this problem, but I will not let it happen to me. That's what Allah created la for. That's what Allah created the power to say no for. The power to say, I'm not going to do that. In order for man to look deep inside of himself, look deep inside of this paradise that Allah created in man. See, man was not only created in a paradise, he was created with a paradise within him. And that paradise within man was his brain, was his mind. This mind of man has produced more in just the last 200 years than you ever seen on this planet Earth before. Coming out the mind of man. The pyramids came out the mind of man. Medicine came out the mind of man. The flying machines came out the mind of man. It is this garden that Allah talks about in Quran that produces these things. But it can never bring these things out of that garden if it did not have the power to say la. If it just submitted to the creation and let the grass grow over him. Just submitted to the creation and let the water run down and drown him. and let disease just take its whole clan out. He had to say that. He had to be able to say, we're not going to die because of this disease. We're not going to die because of these animals. We're not going to be run out of this part of the world. We're going to find a way to make a living. We're going to find a way to live. We're going to find a way to bring food into existence. We're going to find a way to go into this earth and to bring a world out of it that's for our pleasure. That's why Allah created life. So when you see that verse in the Quran where Allah said to the Malaikah, make sujood, and all made sujood but Iblis, understand why that was that. Understand Allah created that. He didn't create the next thing that followed that, but he did create the power to say that within the Malaikah. And then once the Malaikah was able to say la, the Malaikah was no longer a Malaikah that was created in a way that he was just didn't have any choice. The Malaikah then became a jinn. Jinn was that form of Malaikah that had the power to say la. The feelings, the emotions in the creation. That power. So it is that power that said la. And it is the power in you that causes you to be able to make progress and advance. Same thing. Allah identifies it in the Quran in those terms so we can understand it. But understand the same paradise that we speak about in the Quran, the same jinn that we speak about in the Quran, the same malaika that we speak about in the Quran, and the same insan that we speak about in the Quran is you. That is over with. That creation already has taken place. Now Allah is talking to you directly. You are the Adam that Allah is addressing. You are the Adam that is expected to do something with this creation. The Adam of old, the one you read about in the old, he's not coming back other than in you. He's in you. And it is you that has to do what Allah created man to do. When the jinn took on that nature, he also had another characteristic in him. Remember now, when we say jinn, we're still talking about insane. Because jinn, when he identified himself, when Iblis identified himself, he identified himself and says, why you didn't make sujood? Why you didn't bow down? His words were, I am better than he. Translated properly, that means I am the best part of the creation. Translated properly, I'm the best part of this creation you call man. I'm the best part. That's what he was saying. And why would he say he's the best part? See, because he saw the picture. He saw the picture. He saw the power he had. He saw the power that Allah had given him. The jinn has the power to what? The jinn has the power to say la. The jinn has the power to overcome obstacles. The jinn has the power to make things feel good, feel bad, determines likes, dislikes. All of those are part of the jinn nature. Whether you like the food you eat is part of the jinn nature. Whether something is distasteful to you is part of the jinn nature. All of that is part of the jinn nature. So the jinn nature made the mistake of thinking, because it's so important to creation, creation has no meaning without me, jinn is saying. He has no meaning, no way to appreciate this great creation you have put here. Without me feeling things, without me having this feeling that man can understand what you have done. He has no power in order to appreciate this other than through me. This is what the jinn was saying. This is why he's saying, I am better than he. I come before him without having feelings, without having emotions, without having a grasp of what is good, what is not good, without taste. He's nothing. Man is nothing. And this is what the jinn was saying. self, your own nature. Look at your nature. Your nature is about the jinn. Your nature is about the insane. Your nature is about the Khalifa. Your nature is about all of that Allah has created. It's in each and every one of us. Don't sell yourself short. Don't think you're just here as a leaf on a tree. And even a leaf on a tree has meaning. But don't just think you're just here. Not one of you. Not one of us should think we're insignificant at all. We should see ourselves as Adam. You should see yourself as Adam walking the earth. As the first man that Allah allowed to breathe this air and drink this water and eat this food. That's who you should see yourself as, because that's who you are. That's who you are. And never let nobody tell you anything different, because they are a liar. Let no one lie you out of what Allah has given you. You didn't even ask for it, and He created you. You didn't even have any idea what you have, and He gave it to you. He out of His mercy, He gave you your mind to think and take control of whatever you wanted to do. Whatever you want to do in this creation is up to you in your mind. Don't let anyone think or tell you that's not true. I've seen people get up and walk out of the gutter just because they changed their mind. I've seen people come out of the bottle of alcohol that had them incarcerated, lost their families, everything. And yet, when they made their mind up, they crawled up out of that bottle and built a life for themselves. That's the power of the mind. And Allah gave it to you out of His mercy. Gave it to you out of His mercy. You didn't ask for it. So when we begin to look through Quran and begin to understand some of these things that is revealed in the Quran, and we begin to understand some of what Allah is instructing us with, then we begin to hold on to that valuable part of ourselves that's so valuable that we would never tarnish it if we just knew. If we just knew how valuable our character was. You know how Prophet Muhammad was identified? You know how Allah identifies in the Quran, identifies Prophet Muhammad? Not so much as a prophet, not so much as someone who can even remember the verses he was given. But he says, if you want to be closer to him, look at Muhammad's uswa. Uswa. His uswa. That's what he's identified by, his uswa, his character. Why is it his character? Why is his character so important to you? He lived 1,400 years ago. Here you are today. Why is his character so important to you today? Just so you can wear a jalabi? Just so you can paint your beard? Just so you can say, I follow Prophet Muhammad? No. His character is so important to you because it serves as a standard. It serves as a standard by which you can govern your own life. Parts of the Quran calls it a witness. It said Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a witness to all of us. That's what it's talking about. It's not saying that he's going to be watching us or he's going to be saying it and he stands up suddenly. You before Allah and Prophet Muhammad stand up and say, well, what he did. No, it's not about that. It's about you and me looking at the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and using it as a barrier or as a barometer about which we can govern our lives. And if you do that, there's 9 times out of 10, you're going to have the kind of character that Allah will accept. You're going to have the kind of character that Allah will accept. He will be pleased with your character, and you will be pleased with him, because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was pleased with Almighty Allah, was pleased with him, and he was pleased with Allah. So When we look at that, we look at getting an understanding of this Quran. We look at getting a understanding as to what the Quran means to us and why. And why? When we begin to unfold the whole idea about the jinn, the whole idea about man, the Khalifa, insane. When we begin to unfold that whole idea, we begin to come to some reasoning in our own mind. And we begin to reason in our own mind as to what are our capabilities individually. What are our capabilities individually and then collectively? What are our capabilities? We look in history, we find that when man came into the knowledge of himself, and by that I mean when man began to realize that he had a mind, an intellect, that he could use to develop this creation. When he became into that consciousness, he began to build and develop. He began to build pyramids. He began to build things that would service him. Man began to realize one of his main characteristics was not a characteristic of greed. One of man's characteristics was not a characteristic of greed, not his main characteristic. Man's main characteristic was one of a servant. One of a servant. Abdu. A servant. Man is a servant of Allah. Not only is he a servant of Allah, he's a servant, and the way you serve Allah is to serve the people. Man is a servant to the people. He creates and will bring things into existence because he believes it would help the people. Do you think that the fellow who brought the train into existence was thinking about himself just riding on a train across the country, back and forth? No. He was thinking about what beauty this would be, that people could get in a car, a train car, and get in that train car and go from one part of America or the world to another part, and never have to put their foot on the ground, didn't have to ride a horse or anything of that nature, and many of them will be able to get in this car. He thought about the service that would be, the service that would be to mankind. You know, there's a rich man who lived in our time, in America, who became the richest man in the world. And he became the richest man in the world in his time because of his very will to want to serve the people. His name was Henry Ford. Everything about Henry Ford wasn't great. No one's all great. Only Allah's perfect. When you start looking for perfection and an individual being perfect like what you're thinking about Allah, you look at the creation wrong. The only perfection we got that Allah created us perfectly with a brain to be able to reason, to be able, when we make mistakes, we'll be able to correct mistakes. If we can correct them, maybe the next generation correct them. That's the only perfection in man. Man was created a perfect human being. That's what a human being does. He steps forward, makes a mistake, and corrects it. He's not Allah. Allah makes no mistake. He says, kun, fire, kun, and it exists. Without any juggling around, without any putting it back together, without any making up like you're doing with clay. You know what they say, and Allah made man from the dust of the earth, and some people have that description as he taking clay and making it into a man. That's because of their understanding. But that's not what it is really talking about. And we should know that Allah doesn't have to continue to reshape his creation. So, in this creation, and in the story of Henry Ford, we find that that rich man, every opportunity he got to save the people some money, he didn't. He went down on the cost of the car when other people started going up on the cost of their car. And when other people were talking about employment, he paid his help, his employees, more money. And those two aspects are attributed to making him the richest man in the world because sales just went out of the roof. Servant. Prophet Muhammad is the servant of Allah. We are the servant of Allah. And what that means is that we do things, say things, and move things to help serve the people. Make it a better world. We try to make the world better for those coming behind us. We try to make it a better world for our children. We try to make it a better world for the children that we can't even see. There are people coming into this world. You will never see them. You will never hear their voices. You will never hear a word they speak, or you never would see a word they write. You never see a movement they make, because they're thousands of years down the line. But what you do today does connect to them. Just the same as the connection was made of ancient Egypt and ancient Rome and all these other ancient places, the connection was made to the day. That connection is made and passes down through history. They call it hereditary. Hereditary socialization. How the socialization process is passed down through generations. And so what you do today, the way you think, the way you operate, how you carry out yourself today will affect the future. So Allah is saying, keep that in mind. What you do is not just about you, it affects those that come in. And I blessed you with existence. I blessed you with to make a better world here. I blessed you with all these things. And all you have to do is serve man. Serve. Do good things. Bring about a good world. Most of the trouble we have in the world today is because people have not adhered to that particular principle. The greed came in. So with that, we want to take a short point. We want to close the day with a reminder and some of the things we need to go over. Sometimes we're unable to do that because there's just not enough time, but there's some things I would like to leave you with. And speaking about things to do and things that must be done is relevant to the world. But the way the world is going, the world has to be guided, and Allah guides the world. Allah guides the world through prophets and messengers and people. And He says in the Quran that He's going to create ummah, a balanced ummah. And it would be witness. The word witness, Shahid, Shahid is not meaning the same as you see an event happen and you're a witness to that event. It's not the same as that. It's another meaning, a broader meaning. This meaning is that this is by which you can measure. You'll be able to measure whatever you're trying to do. This will be your measurement, and use it as a measuring rod. That's what Allah is saying. That's why He says of Prophet Muhammad, He says, Prophet Muhammad is an example. He's an example. An example is simply that when you in class, algebra class, or any kind of school, the teacher doesn't do the whole lesson for you. The teacher does a couple examples. And those couple examples enlighten you enough that you'll be able to do the whole lesson. That's what Prophet Muhammad Sallam represents. And that's what this ummah that Allah is bringing into existence represents, the one that Prophet Muhammad established. And what's happening today in America. You know, many times we look at America because we think America is the land of the free and the home of the brave. and the land of milk and honey. But there's more to it than that. The freedom is necessary for the world to receive Allah's word. Happens all over the world, and it's happening here in America too. If America was not a free nation, the way it is, and there's some bad parts about America, but there's one good thing, the freedom. We wouldn't be able to practice Islam in America the way we do. There are Muslim countries that you can't practice Islam the way we do in America. You go in some Muslim countries, Imam can't just talk what he want to talk about in terms of khutbah. He come up there with a piece of paper talking about what he want to talk about, they bring him down from there. And in some cases, they may jail him in a Muslim country. So the freedom here in America is a political freedom. A political freedom which allows us to grow into a moral freedom. The moral conduct of the society can grow because of political freedom. If you don't have political freedom, they hammer down the moral conduct of the people. Every time someone speaks about something of good and do something good for the people, they lock him up. He's speaking against the state. He's speaking against what we're trying to establish. But in America, you have political freedom. This political freedom allows Islam to grow. It allows us to grow in a full character. And it allows us to develop moral consciousness in the world. Human excellence, right here in America. Right in the midst of what some call the land of the Kaaba. Only because they don't understand. I have reason to believe, based on research, that although many people in America who were successful didn't say Allahu Akbar, and some of them did, they didn't tell the public because of the nature in which the situation was. They still talked about a belief in a deity, belief in not any deity but God, the Creator. And that is part of what allows you the freedom in America, what allows us the freedom in America. And I'm I guess one would say elated, or maybe even just happy, or glad would be another term. But one thing that gives me pleasure is that Allah blessed me and you to be born in this particular time. Why? Because at this particular time when Allah is bringing in a culture, bringing in a community that's in the middle of when the world is changing. It's in the middle where the old world is going out and the new world is coming in. That's what's happening in America right now. The old world is going out and the new world is coming in. What are we talking about when we say world? We're not talking about the ground that you walk on or the buildings you see. We're talking about the attitude of the people. We're talking about the way people relate to each other. That's the world. That's what makes up the world. How people treat each other is the world. That world of greed, that world of hostility, that world of racism, that world of sexism, that world is going out. Believe it or not, it's going out. Just as sure as you're sitting here, as sure as I'm standing here, it's going out because Allah said so. Allah says He's going to make a new world, a new heaven and a new earth. The old one is going out. And the description is it's so being eradicated to such a degree that talks about it burning up in fire. That's the degree. See, fire burns up something completely. It burns it up so much that only thing that's left is ashes. The world that you're living in now that's passing out won't even be remembered in the time. In some of these conditions that are going on today. The human being won't even remember these conditions. And this racism and these other things that are happening. Because that world is leaving. And the new world is coming in. And you and I are born and privileged by Allah to be here and experience it. If you don't experience it, just look at it. Just listen to it. Listen to the Quran and look at what's happening into the world. You will see it. And that's enough to be thankful for. So we thank Almighty Allah for blessing us, for being here this day on Yom Jumuah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Our Lord, give us the best of this world and of the hereafter, and protect us from the fire. Amen.